Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online Let's Talk video. In this video we're going to be talking about the speculation of Gates of Oblivion and what could be coming with it. Not just about the chapter release, but also about the DLC releases as well. From DLC 1, the dungeon DLC that we don't know the name of, to the chapter release, again we don't know the name of, the next DLC release, which is dungeon, and then the final DLC release, the open world one. So, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm here in the wonderful land of Cyrodiil, because we all know that the next year-long event, the Gates of Oblivion, is going to be taking place somewhere around Cyrodiil. It's quite obvious in the teaser trailer, with Sharp Arrow laying on the stone table with the Book of Oblivion as she's laying there and dreaming about entering Oblivion. So we know that it deals with Argonian architecture in some of it because of where it's at. So my speculation on this new season is the first dungeon DLC. The first dungeon DLC, I think, is going to be an introduction to meeting up with, I think her name was Ellen Sharp Arrow, but we're going to meet up with her. She's a character, by the way, if you didn't know, and I do want to kind of cover this real quick, if you didn't know, was in the Hrothgar DLC, or the Orsinium DLC. Now, Orsinium, the DLC itself, actually replicates a chapter release in its size and everything like that, and that's one of the reasons why it costs 3,000 crowns to buy it, I believe. I don't know if it still costs that, but it did before. But it comes with the 2 public dungeons, the 6 world bosses, the 6 delves. I think it's 6 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. 6 delves. 6 world bosses. So, and it came with the Maelstrom Arena, which it didn't come with the trial. But I think this was their first iteration, or first attempt at creating a chapter release, because this was a grand story, and there was a lot of content to it. So I can see that being, again, like the next destination kind of thing down here in southern Cyrodiil. And I want to say that it would be one that would take place in this area of Cyrodiil. So this is my theory of where the chapter is going to release is here. The dungeons, though. What's one area of the game where we have had no dungeon releases? Can anyone tell me? Because my mouse is on it. Cyrodiil. We've had dungeon releases in Imperial City, which is a part of Cyrodiil, but it is now considered a separate location from the Cyrodiil map. So adding dungeons, or a dungeon even, to the Cyrodiil section would make sense, with maybe uncovering the book of Mehrunes Dagon. Maybe some priest of Mehrunes Dagon book that talks about how to open these portals to Oblivion, and maybe it leads up to that. Again, we don't know. They're gonna do a prologue quest. We all know this. It's gonna come out before the DLC. The dungeon DLC comes out. That'll lead us into the Gates of Oblivion storyline. They did it with Elsewhere, with the dragon storyline. They did it with the last year-long storyline, which I don't even remember the name of anymore. And now we're moving into the Gates of Oblivion storyline. So I could see that being a thing. Like we're in search of something like information, or possibly these could be these dungeons could literally be portals into the realms of Oblivion, which would make some really interesting storytelling, let me tell you. I think that would be an awesome story. Like, they're instanced gates that you teleport to, or whatever, that maybe one is in Cyrodiil. Maybe one is in, it could be in the swamps in Shadowfen. I don't know if they'd add another dungeon, considering it's got 3 here already, but you get my point. Like, they could even add it to Murkmire area. I don't know. Murkmire would also be a great thing, because if you notice the Argonian who's lying down asleep also looks like one of the Argonians you meet in the main story here. And I'm not talking about the evil one. I'm talking about one of the good ones you meet resembles them. And I want to say they look like one from the Brightthroat village, or possibly even the Deadwater village, even though they look like a normal Argonian. But it could be one of those characters that you meet up with as well, with Ellen Sharparrow. So I think the first dungeon DLCs is going to be something like the prologue's going to be leading up to like getting the book. Then the book is going to open, like, is going to be the thing that tells them, hey, we found these 2 gateways to Oblivion. And you go to Oblivion and you find this army amassing for an invasion into the mortal realm. And that leads up to the chapter release. And the chapter release is going to be this. I don't know if they're going to do like a 2-part release like they did with, or 2-section release like they did with Western Skyrim, where you got like the, Western Skyrim area with Solitude, and then you got the underground area of the Blackreach. Could they do that with a release of a section of Cyrodiil and then a section like Cold Harbor? But this is where a lot of the speculations gets a little different, because we don't know how they're going to do the map content release. But those are just, again, this is just speculation. This is just me saying, hey, these are my thoughts on where the content could be going, with them doing a split map with the chapter release. Now, with every chapter update, we get a lot of other things. We get a lot of extra stuff. We know that they're going to be expanding the antiquities system with this, adding new things to find in the world, mythic items and such. How many mythic items? Don't know. I think we only got 2 with Western Skyrim, and I think we only got 2 with the Reach area. Or maybe we got 4 with Western Skyrim and 2. Yeah, we got 4 with Western, and we got 2 with this. So we could get 4 new items added to this section of the map, which would be kind of cool. I think that would be good to add 4 new mythic items to the game, because then it adds more options for players to build with. And builds are they always need to expand on that. But before I get any further into the more, like features that they could add with the chapter, I want to go back to the DLC and talk about what feature they could add with that. And this is something that I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? Like, that's not really a feature, that's just an adjustment to the armor, which they already said they were going to do, but they didn't do. And that, my friends, is the incorporation of crit being both. See, they announced it with the last DLC, that was something that was coming, was the changing of weapon and spell critical to just critical rating. And they did not apply it to the game. It's not in the live version, it's not on the PTS. So it never got added. Only 1 set got that benefit that I know of. All other sets in the game were left alone. Now, why is it important that they implement this with the release of that DLC? Well, it wouldn't really be a feature, it would just be an adjustment to current stuff. But it would be a feature to existing players and new players coming into the game, because of the fact that it's altering how the game works and how combat works. Now, why would it be important to add this critical change? Because then it allows for hybridization of play. And this would be great reason for them to add the next feature. A possible new skill line. But where would that skill line lie? it wouldn't be a class because adding a new class doesn't apply to every player. And that's really kind of like when you look at the game and what they've done so far. With Somerset, or with Morrowind, we got the Warden class. Somerset, we got a new skill line. The Sigic Order skill line, which is in the guild skills. And if you look at our guild skills right now, we have Dark Brotherhood, Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Sigic, Thieves Guild, and Undaunted. What other guild lines could they add besides, like, the Bard skill line? Like, honestly. And we got the Bard school with Solitude, but they didn't add a skill line for it. In fact, with the release of the next chapter after Somerset, what was Elsewhere, we did get a new class, and that new class was the Necromancer. And this made it to where we have 6 class choices and 11 races to choose from. Now, the 6 classes, when you look at them, gives us a good balance of classes in the game. Adding another one, they would have to make it physical based. In order for it to be different, it would have to have more physical based attributes, which would be something that they could do, and it would really fall into that the idea of the hero, the Nord hero, but they didn't even do that with, again, the next chapter that came after Elsewhere, which was the Greymoor chapter, which introduced Northern Skyrim, which didn't have that new class. It had a new revamped system, which was the Vampire skill line. Now, some people said the Werewolf got adjusted. Werewolf actually got adjusted in the before that, and it wasn't even in a DLC release. It was in a chapter release when it got majorly adjusted. And I want to say it was Northern Elsewhere, but it could have been the DLC that came out in Southern Elsewhere one. But it was somewhere in that time period when the Werewolf was adjusted. But the Vampire skill line was completely redone, basically, and released with the chapter release of Markarth. But Markarth added a new skill line. It really did. It added the world skills, excavation and scrying for the antiquities stuff. So it did add a new skills system to the game. So now we should be getting a new class. But is a new class really necessary with this update? Well, it could be. It could be if you change something else in the game and how something else works in the game. Now, what that class would be, I have no idea. I've tried to think about it, like, what class could you add to the game that would fit that kind of personification of, like, this Cyrodiilic scene that we've never seen before. But it would have to be something we've already seen. So what would it be? A bard? No, that wouldn't really work. A ranger? No, we kind of got that with the warden. So what would it be? So a new class could be possible, but only if one change they said, and it was Rich Lambert who's mentioned this. They put a freeze on something a while ago. In fact, a long while ago with Murkmire. Now, if you guys don't know the release system and how it's worked so far, we had Orsinium and all that, but their first chapter release was Vardenfell. Vardenfell's DLC release was Clockwork City, open world. It had 2 dungeon DLCs in between, but it wasn't a year-long story. They didn't start doing the year-long stories, honestly, until Elsewhere. Before that, we had Somerset and Murkmire, and then we had Northern Elsewhere, Southern Elsewhere, and then Greymoor and Markarth, which is Western Skyrim, and the Reach. So we had those released. But look how far back Murkmire was. Murkmire was after Somerset. Then we had Northern Elsewhere, Southern Elsewhere. We had 2 years, almost, where the CP system The champion point level system was put on hold. And they have had 2 years to fix, adjust, and change and alter this system. Now, why would it be important to introduce this with this chapter release? Because with this chapter release, we might get a new class, which would make the purpose of playing that new class important because of the introduction of the changes to the champion system. Now, what's the main progression at end game in ESO right now? This is your end game progression system. But it's not. It's an addition to the existing end game progression system, which is gear progression, which is part of character progression, and skill progression. Character progression literally stops once you hit CP 160. Now, the devs know this. Know this system is flawed. That's why they put a hold on it. That's why they put a freeze on it. They know it's a flawed system because it's a system that starts at level 50. Now, why is that bad? Well, you have to get a character to level 50 in order to unlock it. And then you unlock the champion point system. Well, guess what? You didn't have to do that in Skyrim. You didn't have to level to a certain level to unlock the celestial star system. In fact, you got that right out the get-go. So, how could they introduce a new CP system? Well, this is my speculation. This is my theory on it. The way they revamp the CP system is they add it to your already pre-existing leveling system. They incorporate it into your character progression itself. Now, why is this important? Because it leads into another storyline that we're not going to talk about here, because I don't want to get people wondering and guessing the next big story. But it has to do with that, and we'll leave that alone. But it makes sense for them to introduce this new change as they add this new class, or possibly just this itself. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, if they add this new introduction to the champion point system, it kind of defeats the purpose of buying the new expansion. Like, what skills are we going to get with it? Well, somebody pointed out something that's really interesting, and that is a possibility of adding a new weapon skill, which is something they could do. And it would add to the idea of the reasoning for the change to the champion system, because it's a cross-player thing. Now, remember what I mentioned earlier about skills being the primary extension of in-game progression. A lot of people don't realize how much skill progression there is in this game. When you talk about leveling your character from 1 to 50, depending on where you do it and how you get to 50, most of the time you end up with about 89 skill points by that time. 89. And that depends on how you do it. But a max of 89 to 92 skill points. Now, that 92 is my best at hitting 50. I've ended up with 92 skill points, and that's from doing quests and sky shard farming while I'm doing that stuff. And that means progressing my character. Like when I played through Northern Elsewhere with my 2 vampires, I played one through the storyline here, and I played one through the Overland storyline somewhere else. The person who played through here and then moved on, by the time they hit 50, they had 92. A person who I started in that area ended up with 89 or whatever it was. So I got 3 more skill points prior to it. And that's because when you finish the main story or the Elsewhere storyline and then you move on to this storyline, you actually end up with an extra skill point from doing the hooded figure storyline. So I know it sounds weird, but you do end up with an extra skill point from that. So it actually gives you a bonus of 1, but then you get 2 others because of everything else that you're experiencing from doing the previous story and then moving into the new the base game story. And that's really just dependent on how you play the game. I'm a veteran player. I have a lot of experience playing a lot of this content. So the champion point system getting revamped, getting put into your basic 50 levels of content progression, or first 50 levels of progression, makes a lot of sense. And I'll explain why in a second, but it does make a lot of sense. And it makes a lot of sense if they add a new class. It doesn't make a lot of new sense if they added a new class and still had it sitting at us at 50. Because it kind of makes the champion point system moot, just like it is now. Think about this. Any veteran player who's played through the game automatically gets access to all their champion points. Now remember, on the live server, I have 1,011 champion points. I can only spend 810. So how do you take 810 champion points and put it in the progression to 50? By giving them so many champion points to spend per star constellation as they progress to 50. And this leaves the champion system mimicking what it did before, but also changing what it benefits, or how it benefits you. And I could see them doing a lot of major changes to the CP system. I mean, because it needed it anyways. No offense to the devs, it really did. I think one of the biggest things was this. The way the CP system's set up now, you have the warrior tree. It's called the warrior, by the way, this side here. And you have the steed, you have the lady, and you have the lord. Then you have the thief side, which is the tower, the lover, and the shadow. Then you have the mage side, which is the apprentice, the Antronach, and the ritual. And all of these played into different things. One of the things I've said in the past is the warrior tree needs to deal with tanking, the green tree needs to deal with stamina DPS, and the blue tree needs to do with magic DPS, or healing. But you should be able to put your points where you want them. You should still get that freedom. But if they dumb this down, like they did Star Wars, like they did World of Warcraft and all these other games, and then you will have this major problem of the past from other MMOs where you either tank, a stamina DPS, a magic DPS, and healer just kind of falls in there. Or they could add a fourth tree. But why do that? Why not just make it like this? This deals with tanking, this deals with damage, stamina damage, and magicka-based stuff. Healing's included in part of the magicka-based stuff because most heals are magicka-based. There are stamina heals. So it would make sense to have that here as well. So you have the healer spell damage here, and you have the stamina DPS, magicka DPS, and that here. Like, there's a lot of things they could do with the champion point system overhaul. But the reason I say it would be best to apply it with a new class and adding it to the leveling process is because then it makes in-game what it should be. Gear progression and skill progression. That means unlocking new skills that you can use in the game. But this leads me up to the next the next thing, which is, where do you go after all this into the next release? And that's where the next release comes into play. You've had this champion system overhaul, you've had a lot of these other changes added to the game with this, and it makes perfect sense to introduce that. So that's all and that's how I'm not going to go into that next phase. So that's what I think they're going to do with that. Now we got 2 more dungeons coming. Where would you add these 2 new dungeons? Well, I would add them to the new location. The reason for that is because they did it with Elsewhere. Or with this. They added one of the new dungeons here, Castle Thorn, and they added one of the new dungeons to another section of the world, which makes sense. See, and I think that's what they need to do with this, is they need to add one dungeon to the new location with the trial, which, by the way, whatever the trial is, it has to deal with Mehrunes Dagon, or it has to do with something that takes this, like, makes that part prevalent of the game. But I think the next DLC, the dungeon DLC, is going to do that. It's going to split it between here and maybe even add another one to Cyrodiil. So we have 2 in Cyrodiil, and maybe 1 in, say, Craglorn, or even Western, or maybe even Orsinium, and this is what leads us to that book. Or it could be it's in Murkmire, and that's what leads us to the book. There's a lot of speculation there. But now we can talk about the final DLC of the year. This is the one that closes out the year-long storyline of the Gates of Oblivion. Now, you guys remember how I said they could do it, where they could do this section here for the new location? Well, one of the things I want to point out here is you can almost see lines where they've already got DLCs kind of blocked off. Now, you're probably going, what? How do you see that? Well, if you look over here at the Thieves Guild DLC, Thieves Bane, there's something that has never been here before prior to the release of Markarth. And I know this because I went watching one of my previous videos the other day, and I noticed this. You see this little line here? This is a border line for a chapter or a DLC. If you look at certain locations in the game, you also see these lines kind of hidden in the world for where they could add new locations. Now, not a lot of these are prevalent. They're not well seen. I mean, you can kind of see one here, and you see this line that comes down here, but it's like this whole section here is well, there's a line here. So this could be like the next big chapter release for this area, but then you have these 3 sections that could be the DLC. We haven't even been to Solitude, or not Solitude, whatever this place is where you go in the Morrowind DLC. So, in the original Morrowind game, this was the DLC location that you went to with the werewolves and stuff. But that's not even part of the game. But we know that High Rock is coming in the next major release of Elder Scrolls. Not Elder Scrolls Online, Elder Scrolls itself. That's where we're going. We're going to the High Rock area. This is going to be one that takes place in that area. And we don't know how much of High Rock it's going to be composed of. Is it going to include Craglorn? Is it going to include Benkorai and Alakir Desert? Is it going to have Hughes Bane in it? Is it going to be all this in the game? Is it going to be like this huge area of the game? We don't know. So, remember what I was talking about earlier about the DLCs and where they could go? Well, the chapter looks like it could be this whole section right here, because there's no real lines when you look closely that cap off this stuff. There's this line that goes right here and then across. So I could see this being the next chapter release and the whole section being the chapter release. But what about these Oblivion portals? Like, we know we're going to Oblivion, but why, like, how? It would have to be a new location that we travel to. Well, what if it was this? The chapter is the story that leads us to that. These portals are opening up from Oblivion, and these are the, like, Abyssal Geysers, or like the Harrow Storms, or like the Dark Anchors, or, or the Dragons and elsewhere. They're portals opening up from Oblivion. These are the gates of Oblivion opening up. But the final one, the final DLC, is going to be like Cold Harbor. A brand new location in Oblivion. Somehow we get pulled into Oblivion in the main story. So like the prologue is us finding a way into the Oblivion realm. And we finally figure out how to get into the Oblivion realm. So the next chapter, or the final part of the year-long event, the DLC, is a new area like Cold Harbor. It's a new area like Clockwork City, and it takes place all in Oblivion. And those things that we keep seeing, that you see in What's Her Name's dream, where you see Mehrunes Dagon come up and he turns around and he looks down at her, that is what the portals or the gates are gonna, like, that's what the gates do. They open up, and they don't bring a section of Oblivion to the world. It's just a gate to Oblivion, and that's what you see inside of them when they open up, and you see the army, like the enemies come out of it. I think that would be really cool if they did the year-long event that way. But that's pretty much it for this, guys. I mean, I could go on to more speculation about how there could be this new class, but it could be like, a class that fits within the Imperial type play. But I mean, then it has to be a class that incorporates 3 different skill lines and all that. I don't know what kind of class they could add, if they do add a class. And there is a big chance they're not, and they're just going to add the extra 2 weapon skills to the weapons line, which is possible too. I mean, 2 new staff lines would be cool, and it would add a new element to the game for play. The same thing. Oh wow, I didn't know I could upgrade my thing finally. That's cool. Now I got Ballista. So, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, when you play an MMO and you speculate where the next content's going to go, like, a lot of people didn't realize Shadowlands was coming for Warhammer, because the way it ended the story. Like, it literally ended the story with What's-Her-Name turning on you in the previous game, or the previous expansion in World of Warcraft. But now we have Shadowlands for World of Warcraft, which takes you into the realm of the Shadowlands, because she broke the mask, or the helm of the Lich King. And that was the key to get there. Like, okay. But now we have this, and this is the world of Elder Scrolls, the world of Tamriel. And, we don't know, well, it's the land of Tamriel in whatever world, I don't know. I don't know, I'm too stupid. But you guys get my point here. Like, I'm not stupid. I'm just saying, like, I feel stupid for saying that.
Say, you're the one who exposed that swindler and Darway, aren't you? Alien.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yeah, shut up. Go out of here. But you guys get my point. Like, there's so many different things that they could do that you could speculate on. These are just my thoughts and opinions on where the year-long event of Gates of Oblivion will lead. Now, I have no idea what could be really happen, but I'm just speculating. Tell me what your guys' thoughts and opinion are below in the comments section, and I will try to reply to them. I've been trying to keep up with that a lot better lately. I know sometimes where I'm like 2 or 3 days out from when you posted. A lot of that has to do with how much time I spend in games doing stuff that I don't see those posts until I get out, or I wake up in the morning. So, and sometimes I just don't reply, especially when it's like somebody just complimenting me or something. I don't reply to a lot of those, or somebody like giving their thoughts and opinions, something like, oh, I really like this. I have something similar. Like, I'll reply to some things, but not everything. I try to reply to everything, but it's really hard. So, but that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Tell me what you think, like I said, in the comments below. Other than that, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. I do that a lot. I say other than that. Other than that, or do subscribe. And if you do subscribe, make sure that you click that notification bell so you're notified when I post new videos. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in